Final Fantasy XIV is one of the best MMOs on the market. The only competition as of April 2020 is probably World of Warcraft, otherwise known as WoW. This game takes place in a high fantasy setting in a world called Eorzea. It's full of hints and nods that a lot of the other Final Fantasy games, and includes a lot of characters like Cid, Biggs, Wedge, and as always there's Chocobos and Moogles. This particular title has quite a storied past. In 2012, the entire game was taken down because it didn't meet the expectations of the team, and a new version of the game was released in 2013. This completely overhauled the experience for players and is the foundation of the version we're playing today. The temporary removal is even referenced in the lore as a 7th Umbral calamity. We can get into the lore later though. Honestly, Final Fantasy XIV is kind of like a Second Life game. It's for fans of the franchise and is all around an incredible MMO experience. A few things to note though. This game is heavily story driven. Most of the game's experiences are walled behind completing specific quests in the story. One example, you won't be able to easily travel from city to city until around level 15 when the major story quest sends you there. On that note, the main scenario quest is usually abbreviated to MSQ and can be found in the upper left-hand corner. Directly below the main scenario quest icon is another very important aspect of the game, the job quest. Each job in the game has a quest chain that provides great gear, it gives access to major abilities, and it pops up every 5 or so levels. Be sure to keep an eye out for these because as you level up, those skills and items are going to be absolutely useful. Next up is classes. One note, I'm not one to say there's a correct term for jobs and classes as they can be used interchangeably without issue because it gets the point across. But to explain, jobs are extensions of their base classes and require a soul crystal to activate. One example is a ninja is just a more badass version of a rogue. The ninja can always go back to being a rogue by removing the crystal, but there's no real benefit to it as they lose a lot of their skills and important abilities. Final Fantasy XIV relies heavily on the time-tested concept of the Holy Trinity. By this I mean tanks, DPS, and healers. All of the combat jobs in the game fall into one or more of these categories. I say more because Red Mage can do a bit of healing, but I'm probably grasping at straws. In Final Fantasy XIV, a player character can acquire all 18 job crystals if they so choose. If you fall into this game hard, I suggest trying out at least one class in each role just to get a feel for them all. And to get you started, here's a few outstanding jobs with bias included. Samurai, pattern-based DPS class that excels at outputting an incredible amount of single target damage and looks incredible while doing it. If you like DDR, you may love this one. Ninja. If you're a Naruto fan, you're in luck. This class has a skill for every situation, but relies on memorizing the order of mudras to execute ninjutsu. I'll have to do a video on this sometime soon to go in depth, but the utility is fun. Last but certainly not least is my main, Warrior. The tank class with a big ass axe. Not hard to learn, mastering isn't tough either, but you're sure as hell not going to go down without a hell of a hit, I swear. Benchmarks. These are for MMO fans who want a bit of information before diving right in. You'll get your mount around level 20 as part of the MSQ. More mounts are for later. The first expansion, Heavensward, begins around level 50. Now I'm not one to create a video only praising the high points of the game. We've got to dig in to some of the negatives as well. So, this thing is being fixed, but we still have to acknowledge it right now. The pre-Heavensward stretch. There's a long chain of fetch quests that only take place in between level 49 and 50, and it's right before the end of the main chunk of MSQ and the beginning of the Heavensward quest line. There's a lot of little fetch quests here. It's not great, it's boring, just muscle through it. You'll find your way through and be very happy on the other side. Next up is crafting and gathering. Unlike most other MMOs out there, Final Fantasy XIV shines a spotlight on its crafting and gathering classes. They're split into two groups. Crafters are known as Disciple of Hand, and the Gatherers are known as Disciple of Land. Genius. Yeah. These classes have their own stats, gear, quest chain, and is one aspect of what you can do in the endgame if you so choose. I'm not saying you can't level this up first. I would just suggest against it if you're just starting out. Some notes though. Each of these classes feeds in some way, shape, or form to the other classes in the gathering field. Botanists give wood to carpenters, who give refined lumber to blacksmiths, who then create weapons to give to adventurers. Miners gather ore and hand them to armorers and blacksmiths, and so on. You get the picture. The crafting and gathering process itself is gamified in a cool way, but I think that's enough talk about these guys for one video. Endgame. Last but not least, let's discuss Endgame, because we all want to know what to do when you've done pretty much everything. Each expansion has its own Alliance raid, which is a 24-man raid-like dungeon. It's about as hectic as you can imagine. Every expansion has a series of 3 Alliance raids, so far, as well as a normal raid quest line, which is an 8-man instance single fight. Most of the time, these can be queued from the Duty Finder or from the Party Finder if you're up to snuff. Gearing up your character can be done from the in-game dungeons, which usually drop gear to get you into the lowest tier raid. Each raid tier drops gear just above the minimum item level of the next tier. There's also in-game currencies, which drop from most dungeons and raids and can be used to boost your item levels so you're not just grinding endlessly. I can go more in depth, but if you're just starting out, don't worry about it too much. You've got a whole MSQ to get through. Notable mentions. These features are things I didn't exactly know where to place, but are major components to the game. Player housing. I started writing this and then realized the way I explained things would make this an entire video. But to explain plainly, free companies, also known as guilds, can buy houses, which are very customizable. Individuals can buy houses as well, however, each server has a limited amount of plots available, so planning is needed to acquire one. Next thing, marriage. You can get married in this game. Yeah, I'm telling you, go to one ceremony at least if you get the chance. Everyone should attend a digital wedding in this day and age. It's quite an adventure. Relics. Relics are late-game class-specific weapons that just look incredible. They level up through a quest chain that is quite a grind, but worth it if you want to look like the most badass person in Limsa Plaza. Golden Saucer Casino. This could, in its own right, be its own video because of how cool it is. There's a fully fledged casino in-game with its own reward system and currency. There's events in the main plaza where you can compete for large prize pools and dodge contests or jumping puzzles, as well as timing minigames and strategy minigames. It's quite the experience. If you have the free time, it's kind of like a little vacation while in game. And those are the primary systems that you're definitely going to want to know a little bit about as you dive into Final Fantasy XIV. I've only glossed over the very, very minimum things that you might need to know, but I implore you to dive deep. This game is quite an adventure and a beautiful world to explore. I'll see you in Eorzea.